In this video, I'm going to grade a DBQ, a document-based question written by Emily Glankler from Antisocial Studies. If you don't follow her on YouTube, follow her now. It's an amazing account filled with videos about every unit of AP World History. Let's take a look at her DBQ. Let's take a look at the prompt that Emily had to answer. It says, evaluate whether European imperialism in the 19th century was motivated primarily by economic or cultural concerns. And a lot of times when you're reading a DBQ prompt or an LEQ prompt, a long essay question prompt, you can move a little too quickly and drive by the meaning of it. So I like to read these prompts multiple times. Evaluate whether European imperialism is Europeans going out and building empires around the world, whether in the 19th century is the 1800s, that's always kind of confusing. So Europeans in the 1800s building their empires, getting colonies, whether they were motivated primarily by economic or by cultural concerns. So in order for Emily to do well in this DBQ, she needs to address that prompt directly in as nuanced a way as she possibly can. Let's take a look at her response. So this is what Emily wrote. She says, beginning in the 18th century, European states were industrializing. Starting in England and radiating outward, states invested a lot of money. This looks like Emily is trying to go after, and I'm going to kind of highlight it here. This looks like an attempt to earn the contextualization point. Industrialization, raw materials, factories, resource-rich colonies, Asia. So if I'm kind of scoring this essay, I'm going to think, does this part that I just marked in green, oh, that's a little bright, maybe make it look like that. Does that part that I've just highlighted point to the contextualization she needs to get that point? I want 2 to 3 sentences that are rich in details that are relevant to the prompt at hand. Do I get that? Yes. She starts the century before, in the 18th century. You can see that here in the first line. She talks about industrialization, which is a specific thing, how it moved from England into the rest of the continent, that there were factory labor and goods and a need for raw materials. Is that sufficient context to set up the claim she's about to make? Yes, this is going to earn the contextualization point. Now let's take a look at her attempt to earn a thesis. And by the way, I'll just say, what a great job Emily did in putting contextualization first and then thesis. That's 2 points she can earn in just her first paragraph. So here's her attempt at the thesis. In the 19th century, European imperialism was motivated primarily by economic concerns. So was it economic or cultural? She's going economic, all economic. Especially the desire to keep up with industrial competitors in Europe. Okay, that's a line of reasoning, a way of saying it wasn't just generically more economic than cultural, it was specific to this desire to keep up with industrial competition. Now I see how good her contextualization is. This is really coming together very nicely. Good job, Emily. However, many imperialists use cultural concerns and language related to cultural superiority, scare quotes, to justify economically motivated imperialism. Okay, let me wrap my head around that. Imperialists were motivated by economic concerns, but they used culture to justify what they were doing. Oh, that's very nuanced. And if I'm thinking about the unicorn point, the complexity point, that's one of the more sophisticated thesis statements I'm seeing. And this thesis statement, besides just earning the point, and I'll highlight this for us in another color. Let's say, we'll grab light pink here. She earns the thesis point, but she's starting to move in the direction of earning the complexity point as well. You never earn the complexity point from one shiny thesis or one nice moment in the essay, but the overall approach. So let's take a look at her rubric up here. We want to, we've got a thesis statement, we've got contextualization, and we have some of the early indications that this is up for earning the complexity point as well. Okay, so the first paragraph is really excellent. I see a contextualization point, I see a thesis point, I'm a happy reader. Emily's making it easy for me to give her the points. She's not burying the lead, she's not hiding the thesis somewhere else. This is a really great start. Now we gotta start counting documents. Is she gonna use all 6 documents? Let's see. European motivations were primarily economic. States wanted to gain access to raw materials, cheap labor in markets, etc., etc. John Stuart Mill explains that through imperialism, England will be able to blah, 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 blah. Mill, lots of chatting about Mill. And then I see she cites it as document 2 here. And let's see if there's, so I see this is all of her work on document 2. That, if I'm keeping count, and I am, That's going to be using at least one of the 3 documents. She needs to earn that point. Using at least one of the 6 documents. But is there any evidence of sourcing or outside information? I want to see what kind of points she's getting. So I'll just read it again. I don't see an attempt to source it, and by source it we mean talk about who the author is. She does that a little bit, he's an English philosopher. Who the audience of that source is, or what the purpose of that source was. I don't see any indication of that. I'm keeping my eye open for that. But I do see how she ties it back into her thesis. And she says, Mill supported the idea that the primary interest of European imperial powers was economic. Mill supported my thesis. See what she did there? That's very good in showing me that she's using the document well, and she's tying it back to her thesis. France also recognized the need. Jules Ferry expressed concerns. Notice she does a quote here from the document 5. That's really nice because it's a nice short quote and right to the point. She's not retyping out long parts of the document for me. Let's see, Captain Lugard, the need, blah, blah, blah. He argues the best, most, blah, blah, blah. For example, if Europeans, infrastructure will be easier for them to gain control, document 6. So far I see document 2, document 5. In fact, let me highlight these so I can kind of keep track. So I'll put these in yellow. That's document 2, document 5, and now document 6. So she's already earned the point for using 3 documents, which is excellent. And again, I'm looking for evidence of sourcing. I'm looking for outside evidence. I don't see any evidence of that outside evidence, but I'll keep my eyes open. Furthermore, he's concerned with colonizing places efficiently, etc. The country that was perhaps the most explicit. These are nice transitions. Do you see this? She's not just listing the countries out one by one, but she's differentiating among them. That's showing me a high level of comparison skill and making me think this might earn the complexity point as well. Okay, the most explicit blah in the Belgian Congo, King Leopold. She does describe it as a political cartoon, but I don't really see that connecting to anything else. The need for rubber was becoming more important, so I'm going to note that document 7 is being used well. Racking up these documents. Notice that in this one body paragraph, the world's longest body paragraph, look at it, she's already got 4 documents in. And that's really excellent. It means that if she runs out of time, at least she's earned the point for the use of 3 documents. And then I get this description of Cecil Rhodes and the founder of De Beers Diamond Company. He had a personal colony. This is interesting. Is this outside information? What we want to do real quick is we're going to go back to the documents to see whether Cecil Rhodes and his De Beers Diamond Company are in one of the documents. Now, if I'm a reader and I'm going through hundreds of these, of course I know exactly what's in every document, but this is something we want to check. Is Emily integrating outside evidence right here at the end of her first body paragraph? So let's take a look. So here we are back in the document. We see the Canton China source, John Stuart Mill. We saw her use document 2. We've seen her use document 5, which is Jules Ferry. We saw Lugard in document 6. And I see the document 7, the cartoon, but I don't see anything about Cecil Rhodes in the documents or as a source himself, as the author of a document. And therefore, that's outside information that's very valuable. So what she's done is earned the outside evidence point with the text I've highlighted in purple. So as we're keeping tally, we've got contextualization and thesis, which she earned in the first paragraph. We have the use of at least 3 documents, check. We have the use of outside information, check. I've got hints of complexity and nuance. I don't have a lot of evidence of sourcing yet, and that's a concern for me. Did she earn the sourcing point? You have to take 3 documents and explain how the point of view of the author, how the author's identity, how the audience relates to the actual interpretation of the source. She's still got another body paragraph. Hopefully she does it here. European nations most wanted to trade with China. Look at this topic sentence. Great job, Emily. It's like 8 words. She's not writing a work of art. She's writing a draft under duress, under the time constraints of really only having 45 minutes to write. So that's something you want to think about. Emily's smart and a great writer. Yet here in 45 minutes, she's just getting the job done. On test day, write the essay that you can get done. I have written some live here on the Marco Learning YouTube channel, some essays for AP English Language where there's just some really awkward phrases and some clunky transitions. And it's a little bit scary. I've done it live under time constraints, and you're just writing to survive. You're just writing to get to the next thing. Set a nice low bar for yourself and get the job done. Don't worry about crafting a work of art. There's no points for artistry on the rubric I'm grading on. This had always been a primary destination, etc. Desiring access to port cities, English thing, document 1. So here she's integrating the source from China, and I'm going to give her that because that's very well done. Ironically, the Chinese were the ones who were making cultural argument, referring to the English as barbarians. This is perhaps why the Chinese were unable to respond to the English threat sufficiently, etc., etc. The historical situation of document 1 is important. So I was waiting for this in the previous paragraph, having to hunt around for sourcing. Here, she's sort of whacking me over the head with it. The historical situation of document 1 is important. What I'm hearing Emily scream out from this is, give me credit for sourcing documents. So I'm going to highlight this as a clue that I have that she's going after that point, which is very smart. The English had attempted other ways to recognize this, etc., etc. However, that mission failed because neither side, wow, good, lots of detail here. Lots of detail. Maybe more than I need, I think, for me to give her the point for sourcing the thing, and she's already earned an outside evidence point, so I'm not quite sure what she's doing here, but she's definitely sourced at least one document. Now she's got 2 more big paragraphs, so I bet she's pulled it off, but let's see. Okay, ironically, both sides believed in their cultural superiority, devastating wars, the English were frustrated. I do like her use of transition words. Again, this isn't about style here, but she's integrating in a lot of really great maneuvers to show comparison and continuity and change and some of those historical thinking skills that we like to think about, and causation, right? By existing Canton system, thus, ooh, very fancy. Thus, the illegal opium trade became a way for the English to circumvent these limiting factors and give them more informal access to the Chinese economy. This is, forget what I was saying about her writing, this is very well written, very well done. While the need for raw materials and cheap labor was clearly the primary concern, they often found it was easier to justify and motivate conquest through cultural rhetoric. So she's reiterating her thesis here. Look, it was mostly economic, but they used culture to justify things. This is very clever, and it's showing me that what I saw as complexity in the thesis is sustaining her argument throughout. So great work on this. Various documents that focus on the economic concerns still use language related to this. General Lugard refers to Africans as savages, while Jules Ferry argues that the superior race had a duty to civilize them. So racist ideology is part of the culture that justifies everything, not the culture that motivates it. It's motivated by economics, justified by culture. Very smart. And here I see document 5 and document 6 being used again and well, so I'll just highlight those for myself. Let's see, missionaries had one job. Some point, missionaries in the uncolonized New Hebrides to take possession, to continue their work. Here's document 4. An English teacher might complain that she doesn't put the commas after the parentheses, but I'm not an English teacher. However, the point of view of document 4 is clearly problematic. So now again, she's highlighting how she's sourcing. So I'll mark that. The British missionary writes that tens of thousands of natives are longing and ready for the gospel, blah, 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 past things, a missionary at best. So she's interpreting the source for document 4 through the identity of the author. The author is a missionary. He's coming with particular objectives and particular ways of understanding the people groups he's interacting with. Let's see, more cynically, etc., slightly more excited. He's getting what he wants. So she sourced 2 documents very well. And then we get a final paragraph here. What I hope she didn't do was write a big florid conclusion. I've heard her say, don't do that. Don't write a conclusion. There's no conclusion point on the rubric. So maybe what I'll get here is she'll smuggle in another sourcing of a document. I'll be able to count that she's used at least 6 of them, and maybe one final push over the edge to force me to give her the complexity point, because she's in a good spot right now. The idea that European imperialism was improving, blah, 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 etc. Notice another thing here. I'm not hanging on every word. I'm really looking for points as I grade, and I'm judging this against the standards of a first draft. So instead of this as an experience of watching a Shakespeare play or reading a novel, I'm grading this as a first draft history essay and trying to give it points. Okay, let's see. In India, for example, here's document 3 appearing, and I can't remember whether that one has shown up. I'll check on my list. Many readers will keep a tally of how the documents are being used. However, the historical situation of this document should be taken into account. Let's see if she did it right here. The essay was written just 15 years after the Sepoy Rebellion, another piece of outside information, I think. I'll double check. But she already earned the outside evidence point, so it doesn't matter. It's all extra. And notice she ends abruptly. That's unfortunate. I don't have a conclusion. But like I said, actually, there's no conclusion point, so who cares? What do I have in this essay? Let me count all the documents and make sure she uses them all. I see 2, 5, 6, 7, 1, 5 again, 4, and 3 down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She used all 7 documents well. I never found a misinterpretation. Now let's take a look at our rubric and make sure she got all of the points. The first point here is for thesis. I saw a thesis, it was 2 sentences long. End of the first paragraph, it clearly answered the question, it responded to the prompt. It was historically defensible, it was a good argument, and it had a line of reasoning, it explained why. It also was complex. Did she address 3 documents? Absolutely, she addressed all 7. Did she use 6 documents to support an argument? Yes, she used them to support her own thesis, and she made it very clear to me that that's what she was doing. She would hammer home this point that it was economic motives that were really driving imperialism and cultural justifications that were supporting it. That nuanced idea kept coming through, and she kept forcing me to see that connection. Did she earn the contextualization point? Yes, several rich, detailed sentences right at the beginning. Did she use outside evidence? I think there were 3 attempts at outside evidence. I only needed 1. I liked the first one, so I didn't really bother fussing with the other 2. Did she evaluate 3 documents, the sourcing point or HIP point or POV plus? Absolutely. She only did it for 3, which meant there was no insurance there. If I disagreed with her interpretation or her application, she would have lost the point. So she was skating on thin ice there, but otherwise it was really good. And for me, this gets the complexity point. It's such a detailed and fleshed out answer that really encompasses a complex view. Remember what complexity means. It's a holistic, overall impression that the essay gives. And as I look back at this essay, I think it was excellent from start to finish. So it was an essay that wasn't perfect. It was a first draft. It ended abruptly. It had some really basic transitions, but it gets 7 out of 7. So great work, Emily. If you want to check out her actual process of writing the video, go to Anti-Social Studies right here on YouTube, and you can see how she constructed this essay and got all 7 points.